And hello, everyone, and we're going live in a second. Boom, doom, doom.
Saw them all, beat them all, and is now what he always was. All things are mortal but the Jew. All other forces pass, but he remains. What is the secret of his immortality?
Seth, hi.
Hey, Leo.
Welcome to the Jew-Function, everyone, for another special live broadcast. Earlier than usual. I know we're not being exactly Swiss about it. Our time does fluctuate, but today is a little extra early for a variety of reasons. Today's also Holocaust Remembrance Day, so it's an interesting extra layer, I guess, of importance is added here as well. And I think we're in for a really interesting show. Every show is interesting. Every person you meet is like a whole world. I find. I think you bring someone on, and it's going to be like maybe speak about some area of expertise, but you end up kind of going deeper, and something opens, and that's a part I like best about what we do. And it's funny because I was thinking, said that how we were, we bring guests who are lately have been super relevant, and they're dealing with what's going on, like the professor from Columbia, um
Nimrod, who ran
Nimrod, and
down.
all those guys who are like in the forefront doing stuff, and I have all these questions I want to ask them about their job and what they do and what they see, and what happened in that protest or in that letter to the dean, or all those kind of technical questions. But within a few rounds I kind of forget about all those things. I just want to hear the person, what he really feels, and how he sees this thing from his really point of view, and what's kind of what really motivates him and or her, and where is it going. So I don't know if we're doing a disservice to our viewers, but today I promised myself that we'll try to really open up and get a little maybe deeper into the world of our guest, because she has a really interesting world, one that really encompasses a lot of contradicting viewpoints, which we love because we're all about um, connecting the contradictions. So I love that. We'll say a few more words about her. I will say she's from Europe, and the climate in Europe is also not as sunny. I don't know if it's the same, has the same kind of fervor as you feel on college campuses in
I
the
think
U.S.
in England, I think in England right now, she's in Germany, from
Hmm.
Syria, but lives in Germany. But in England, I saw that yesterday or the day before a Muslim politician just won an election, but not like a Muslim who looks like an Englishman. He's
Oh yeah,
wearing
yeah.
the,
I
the
saw the
robe, and he's shouting that,
yeah,
shouting like,
Allah Akbar. Yeah, yeah, I saw that.
Ya Allah Akbar. So I think that
Which it's the irony is that God is great, but I think that
yeah, but
concept
why are
is
you so angry about it, man?
yeah,
Like,
exactly.
okay, like God is great, but like,
I know
what's the
it's
attitude?
that, and that's something I'd love to
It's
get to.
like
So
God is great, parentheses, and we're gonna kill you if you don't like
yeah,
our God, and parentheses.
yeah. So, but it's interesting. I mean, I think it's really a time where humanity is coming to this realization that okay, we can have different worldviews, but if they're gonna be at the expense of someone else, we're gonna have a problem. And I think it's people starting to realize it. Like you can't, world is too small. You can't just I live here and you live there. No, everybody's living with everybody.
You know what happened? I think that if you look at the trajectory and the natural development of things, that for example, in the 50s, a guy would be married with kids, but let's say let's say there's a percent of the population that's actually biologically gay. Let's say there's a lot of others who are joining on for sociological reasons or for popularity or whatever. Let's say there's a certain percent that's just gay. But this guy didn't have any options in the 50s in the United States. So he got married, he had kids, but he was always gay inside. And maybe he had to figure out a way to deal with it, or maybe he did something. But then society shifts, and now, you come to the 2000s. You're gay? Okay. It was hostile at the beginning. Now everyone accepts you. primary, in the majority of people accept you, everything's fine. You're one of us, every job, you want to marry, that's fine. And then it goes like far, 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 far to the extreme,
Right.
right? Like I want, yeah, like to the extreme, like
Everybody's gonna have to be gay.
right, or like flags, a gay flag on every single school bus, like bus going through my town. So same thing here. It's like, okay, we want to accept like, for example, in Africa, there's not a problem of black supremacy. In Africa, no one's saying there's not enough white representation in university. It's not happening. But in the white countries, it was this feeling came like, okay, let's accept everyone. Let's accept every religion. Let's accept every race.
Yeah, but
And then it goes so far to the extreme that even if that person literally says that they're coming to take over, we're going to put Sharia law in Germany or Sharia law in England, it's like it went so far to the extreme. The momentum went so
right,
far.
but that's what we're saying, because it all rests on layers of ignorant and miseducation and political interests and religious interests, all kinds of interests. People are not realizing who the true enemy is, and I think that's what we're trying to do, to bring to the front the real culprit, not the Jews.
The Jews?
No, not the Jews. The ego, the human ego. There's a quality inside.
Okay, don't give it away. Don't give it away yet.
Yeah, no, but no. I mean, people who follow the show, they know what we're talking about. There's a quality inside that messes things up, and it was necessary. It's a necessary quality. It was the engine of our evolution in the last several thousand years. But at some point, you gotta be like, okay, who's calling the shots here? This crazy animal or me? Like, who's riding? Is it the donkey riding me, or am I riding the donkey? And who's this this human in this equation? What is this human thing, right? So, I think we're going through this process, and in this process, I have to shed a lot of baggage and get rid of a lot of myths and misconceptions, and it's one of the things that, by the way, that our guest is doing. She's involved. I might as well introduce her, because
let's bring her on, please.
Yeah, I'll bring her on in a second. As we said, she's an epitome of contradictions living together in this one person, because she's part Shiite, part Suni, and she grew up in Lebanon and Syria, but then she matured in Europe.
For any of our viewers who, by the way, for any of our viewers who don't know, not only is there an issue between, for example, like Muslim and Jew, also within the Muslims, and hopefully Rawan will be able to talk about this, but the Sunnis and the Shiites aren't great friends either.
So she while living there, I guess she also had this urge to figure out what's going on, why people hate on each other, and started this forum called Arabs Ask to really challenge preconceived notions about Jews in Israel. And I know she's been even more involved with this work since the October 7th events. I think she's writing for the Times of Israel. She has a blog for the Times of Israel. She's working on a book. She's a great social media presence. And I'm just really happy to meet a fellow human. Rawan, Osman, please join us.
Here I am. I was
waiting. Good morning. Happy to see you.
Thank you. Where do I start?
Maybe okay. So maybe just give us. We had a few guests on the show who are Arabs, Muslims. You had a guy from Egypt who sort of left his family. He sort of woke up one day, he's like, I'm not a jihadist, and he just left and moved to the States. A really interesting guy. I had a guy from Germany, actually, who works on de-radicalizing people in prison. So some really interesting people passed here. But maybe, I don't think we've asked people enough, really, if they understand the dynamic just within the Muslim world. So maybe give us a little background of where you come from and this whole relationship within even the Arab world, the tension within the Arab world a little bit, just so people understand what's that like.
Yes. So let me tell you a little bit about myself. So my mother's family are Shia from the Bekaa Valley, and that's the heartland of Hezbollah. And that's where I grew up for 18 years.
In Syria?
In Lebanon. The Bekaa Valley is in Lebanon.
Okay.
Shia, the heartland of Hezbollah, who still are very prominent, thank God. That was ironic. Please, no.
We get irony. It's okay. We're all about it.
My My father's family is from Damascus. It's an old family from the capital city of Syria. They are Sunnis. And as you already mentioned, Sunnis and Shia are not fond of each other. Because, for those who don't know, before Islam split after the death of the Prophet, the Muslims disagreed on who's going to carry on in his position as the leader of the Ummah, the Muslim community, which was much smaller back then. And these internal, let's say it started as bickering and it developed to a point where the Muslims split into two groups. One group wanted to follow Ali, his cousin and his best friend, and the other wanted to follow a different creed who were much more influential, politically speaking. And this resulted in a huge problem, and the group that won killed Ali and his family. The followers of Ali and his family are the Shia today. So to be fair, although I've never been a Muslim, I used to be an atheist. To be fair, especially after studying Islamic studies, so from a neutral European perspective, academic perspective, I think that what happened is not fair. It's despicable. Those,
As if our world is a fair place, but go on.
no,
In parentheses, yeah.
that was the beginning of a problem 1,400 years ago that carries on till this.
So Ali, what
Is the cousin and best friend of Muhammad.
okay, and that's Shia?
Yeah.
Yep.
Shia believe that
Okay.
he is the
He's
And
the
that's Iran, Iraq, and then the other ones are like Saudi?
Iran is, we can say that it's the leader of the Shiite world. They follow the Shiite, the 12 Shia sect.
And their leader would have been Ali, and he was killed by the other ones.
Yes.
Okay.
So this is a law school, the Shiite madhab or sect in Islam. The leader of the Sunni world would be Saudi Arabia because they're not the largest Islamic country, but they have the holiest two cities, Mecca and Medina. And Muslims are obliged, encouraged to visit, to do at least to pay one visit to Mecca, which would be the holy pilgrimage for Muslims. So it's a holy site and a very good source of revenue, I would say. So it has political power. They are the leaders of the Sunni world. These are the two biggest sects, the Sunnis and the Shia. There are many others. But today the tensions are between the Shiite world and the Sunni world. Saudi Arabia was about to join the Abraham Accords. They are in favor of peace. And Saudi Arabia and the UAE give us hope because by joining the Abraham Accords, they introduced a model we couldn't fathom 5 years ago.
Right.
Plus, they show us proof that there is hope. They definitely need a reform, and they could do it if they follow the model that UAE presented and that MBS is working on in Saudi Arabia. So I live between Lebanon and Syria, between the Sunnis and the Shia. I know how deep the hatred between the two groups is, although my parents were moderate and they married, which is something frowned upon in the Arab world. I also lived in Saudi Arabia and in Qatar, and I lived in Saudi back when they still had religious police. So if I forget the veil, because everybody has to cover up, they would order you to cover up, and if you refuse, they would hit you with a baton and deport you, sometimes even whip you in public. This is crazy, and this has changed in Saudi Arabia. It could change in Iran, but it's definitely a much, much, much more extreme model, and we've witnessed what they've done to their own people, to teenagers who are suffocating from their backwardness, and they were killed, executed, or shot. Yeah.
I have a bunch of questions, and I don't know. I don't intend to put you on the stand here as like the expert on all matter as Muslim, but being one and growing up in such an environment, we were definitely more interested in your personal experience. That's more interesting to us. But if you want to, give them, couch it in a more general picture, that's also good. I I have a bunch of questions, but in your mind, when did things get so radical, basically? Because for many years the Muslim world was kind of dormant, was really, and some people would say, well, before the oil made its appearance in a big way, and money and power, everything was more dormant. There was less of an influence in the international arena, and suddenly you feel a growth of influence, but also of a more radical agenda. When did that happen, or why, if you, or how come?
I think it's quite simple, obvious, but in the West, sometimes it's like an epiphany when you share this with the world. So the Ottoman Empire fell after First World War. It crumbled and the caliphate disappeared. That was the fall of the Islamic Caliphate. And since then, the Muslims are trying to revive that caliphate. The last attempt was ISIS lately in Syria and Iraq. So the Muslim world took a blow. The concept of a nation state is new. These new countries popped in the Middle East, in the Levant, or so-called Middle East. It's a Eurocentric name definition, but let's use that. The Middle East, everybody understands what we're talking about. So in the Levant, we have new countries such as Lebanon, newly formed countries. I'm not denying the historical background of each of these communities, but Lebanon is new, Syria is new, Iraq, Kuwait, Jordan, Israel.
Right. All a result of this decolonization. Countries, Europeans pull out and they draw some borders. Yeah.
I love that decolonization concept because people always refer to the Europeans. But before that, just like 20 years before that, the region was colonized by the Ottomans.
But did they draw the lines like the Europeans? No.
No, because they weren't interested in giving you independence.
Right.
You were their subjects and you didn't discuss that because it was a different ruling model and everybody was happy with it. When I say everybody, people accepted. It was taken for granted. You zip it, that was the model the Ottoman Empire ruled for like around 600 years. And then they disappeared. The region was colonized. The entire Islamic world is Arabized or Islamized. I say that because Iran is Islamized, but it's not Arabized. It's one example of many. So this concept of
Hold on, do that again. What is Islamized but not Arabized?
Iran, for example.
Iran. So that's more, it's Persian, let's say. It's not Arab.
It's Muslim. It's a Muslim country, but Arabic is not the official language. People like the Persians did not change to an Arab cult to adopt an Arabic culture, for example. They're not Arabs. Their culture is completely different. Their language is different, and they are proud of their cultural heritage that is way older than Islam. So this did not happen. Also, in countries in South Asia, many countries are Islamized but not Arabized.
Such as
in Africa, for example. Look at Pakistan. People don't speak Arabic. They are Muslims, not all of them, but those who are Muslims, they learn Arabic to read the Quran, but they don't speak Arabic, and their culture is nothing.
Like Malaysia, right? Same story.
Like Malaysia, like Indonesia, there are many examples, but the Levant and Northern Africa are Arabized as well as Islamized, which means this takes a lot away from the Copts in Egypt. Also, like their history is much older than Islam, but they kind of got swallowed up, excuse me. Like the Kurds, like the Yazidis, Even in Northern Africa, in the Moroccan area, the Berbers, the Amazirs, these people are reconnecting with their roots that are older than Islam. But this is very hard as Islam dominates in large parts of the world. So I'm just going to go back to your question. The caliphate crumbled. It's a dream that disappeared, and the Muslims are trying to revive it. And there are more than 1 billion Muslims. Why isn't it working? I don't know. Where is this fantastic model that people are in favor of? You were talking earlier about the UK, and this is problematic because even in Germany, we've seen a large group with waving flags of ISIS. They want a caliphate in Germany, in Hamburg, in the north, which is insane. It's frightening. But these people are gaining political power. They cannot do this in many Arab countries. Imagine them trying to do this in Egypt. The military would squash them. But they do it in the UK. They're doing it in Germany, or not only in these two countries, because they are popping everywhere. And this is dangerous. Let's go back to the war in Syria. The world let the Syrians down. I was there the first 3 months when the demonstrations were, they were demanding dignity. People were so poor, they just wanted a little more freedom because their salaries, even if you do have a decent job, your salary is not enough to pay your rent. People were fed up and they thought, okay, there is a wave, the Arab Spring, so let's try. And they were oppressed in a manner that the world let them down. And a lot of people thought, what do I care about what happens in Syria? But what happened in Syria changed the world politics. The refugee influx that came to Europe, and I wrote back in 2015 about it. Of course, I'm not heartless. I was happy that there is a solution that some could save their families. But I was thinking when Angela Merkel said, wir schaffen das, also we can do this, or we will manage, I was thinking, as a woman coming from that area, please God tell me she has consultants who told her what she's inviting into Europe. We have open borders, so they could be infiltrated by terrorists. Plus, even the adorable ones are misogynists and anti-Semites. And I say this because 90% of them, I'm sure there are exceptions, some are gay, some are atheists, but in general, these people have lived 50, 60 years in a system that dismantles critical thinking and that tells you that all ills of the world are caused by Israel and the Jews, plus men don't respect women. And I took my son and left this corner of the world because I identify with Western values. And now these people come here and we started seeing gang rapes and incidents with Jews. And yeah, this has led Europe to think that the far right is an option, is an alternative, is the solution, which is bad news for all of us. And we see this happening from Australia to Canada. And this will carry on happening because when we see politicians being elected, such as the gentleman you've just mentioned in the UK, it is terrifying. And people think like, what is the solution? If someone tells me they're going to stop immigration, I'm voting for them.
Well, that's the carrot that a lot of parties on the right are waving. Is it even possible? And because I even, you started your answer, I asked the question, when things got radicalized and why. And so I get the why is probably it's a good way of mobilizing people, right? When you kind of fan the flames. And I think there's an opportunity in the West they're seeing an opportunity in the West to take advantage of the way things are set up in the West.
Of democracies.
Yeah, democracy,
They're taking advantage of the weaknesses of democracies. Democracies are not perfect, but this is the best model we have so far. There is room for improvement. But This is exactly what Hamas is doing, or what the axis of evil, the axis of resistance led by Iran is doing. They're taking advantage of the democracies when they speak since October 7th, when they speak to the West, to their sympathizers, they appeal to the Muslims in the Arab world, to first and foremost to Palestinians, to those in the West Bank, to those in Jerusalem, to join, to Hezbollah and to the Jordanians to join, to Arabs and Muslims to join. And they speak to the free of the world, Ahrar al-Alam, the free of the world. What does that mean? They're appealing to those buffoons who are orchestrating the movements on university campuses. These are the free of the world, the LGBTQ community, people who think because they're so simple in their brain. But of course, I support the plight of the Palestinians. Of course, they are being bombarded. I see horrific footage coming out of Gaza. So I automatically, I will go to demonstrations because this is the least I can do, right? I buy a kafiyeh and I go hysterically on the street saying, free Palestine, without the minimum understanding of what's happening and the fact that they are supporting terrorists who oppress the Palestinians as well. So it is a very good way that was adopted after the fall of the caliphate and even before that by Arab leaders, Muslim leaders. It started in a tribal manners because yes, you can get people to join your movement. You give them guns and you tell them, let's fight on the German side or against them. But they were promised independence, a caliphate, and this never materialized. So since the 20s, the 30s, until now, it is the same mindset. The Muslim Brotherhood started back then, and the ultimate cause of the Muslims, the glue, is Palestine. Israel is the enemy, the Zionists, and we all agree on that. The Shia and the Sunnis don't mind killing each other. They did, they still do. But once you tell them Al-Aqsa, Jerusalem, Israel, that they agree on, then they can work together.
So, and so jumping, but I want to kind of move from the historic part to really to what's happening, because you know, and this is no, you know, this is I'm not trying to be, I don't want to be, you know, politically correct about Islam or Christianity or Judaism. You know, every religion has its own thing and its own, and we strongly believe it has its own purpose for existing in the world. Eventually, again, as we see the world here through our, well, basically through our research and exploration, we see how everything is moving. Everything is, you know, there's a forces pushing people, right, from the right, from the left, from above, from below, towards something. You know, and the question is there something or not? You know, so we can debate that, but even without debating some sort of an end goal, maybe some religious end goal or spiritual or godly or what have you, just looking at what's happening now, things are not good. Okay, you don't need to be religious or spiritual or anything to say, well, something is off. Whether it's off and now we can make it better, or whether it's going down the drain, or this is now a question to us, to people. My question is specifically about the fact that if you follow the roots of radical Islam, and I asked you specifically about the radicalization, because there are those who are more moderate, who see coexistence as an important thing. Even as you mentioned, the Saudis who, you know, were willing to modernize and make peace. Again, I'm certain that it was done to advance their interests. They're not great humanitarians. I don't think anyone is a great humanitarian. I think everybody has interests. But where is this going? And we asked some people that came here, where is this going? When Islam doesn't see the world as a place for all religions, it's not a pluralistic religion.
No.
You know, Judaism is a pluralistic religion. We say it's not even a religion; it has a deeper even purpose in this world. But forget about that. By nature, it's pluralistic. You know, you can have people who are not Jews living with you. It's okay. Islam is not a pluralistic religion. It eventually decrees that, you know, there's the part that's been Islamized and the part that's will be Islamized. So where's it going? Is war inevitable? Are all these peace treaties just temporary? What's in your mind? Where is it going? What are we fighting for? Maybe that'll be a better distillation.
It is frustrating when you look at what's happening now, especially after October 7th. When I read the news, I knew, and I was writing a research paper about Hamas's self-representation in the media after October 7th. And when I watched all the interviews, like at the beginning, the first 2 months, and analyzed it, it's so frustrating because I don't understand, what do they want? If there is one positive point that you can think, okay, I can put myself in their shoes. No. I concluded that they are not interested in the same things, or they don't see the world the same way. They want to die. They are detached from this world, from this dimension, and they think that salvation comes in the afterworld, in the afterlife, sorry. So, especially after seeing rockets above Jerusalem, above Al-Aqsa, Iran, like when they sent the drones, the missiles, the rockets, yes, of course, Israel has an Iron Dome, but they didn't know. Maybe they could have destroyed Al-Aqsa. So this raises the question. First, I think everybody knows there is no evidence that Al-Aqsa Mosque is Al-Aqsa Mosque where Prophet Muhammad once upon a time prayed, allegedly. But let's say that this is...
Well, Jerusalem isn't even mentioned in the Quran, so we can say that.
Not once, not in any name, in an alternative name, not once. Palestine, not once. The Israelis or Bnei Israel, many times, Israel and their land. So if this is a political asset, if Jerusalem is a political asset that can gain Iran influence as much as the Saudis, or even more because they retrieved it. But if they're willing to destroy it, I'm lost. If they're willing to allow thousands, tens of thousands of Gazans to die, they're not interested in Palestinian well-being, or this is confusing. Maybe in the West, on university campuses, the naive, the privileged, those who never lived through war, think that this is a liberation movement interested in the right for self-determination for the Palestinians, which is absurd because this axis consisting of Iran, the head, Iran, Hezbollah, the Syrian regime, the Houthis, they're not interested in the right for self-determination for their own people. Right. You don't need to go read about it. Just look at the teenagers who demonstrated in Iran. We can't forget this. It's just a few years ago and still carries on until now. Teenagers, they don't want to wear a veil. That's it. They're throwing a tantrum. They were killed, whipped, executed, raped. A rapper that, I don't know, tweeted in support of this movement would be executed. How insane is this? So if they're not interested in all this, I am very confused. They just want to do Allah a favor by killing all Jews, eliminating Israel. I don't see any other outcome.
Okay, but so there's something that we talk about sometimes, and that is that we're assuming that peace and people getting along is better.
Mm-hmm.
There's other people who have a different worldview.
Yes.
Okay, so that's just the Leo, remember we did this exercise a couple weeks ago, like is one of them objectively correct, or it's just two different worldviews? You know, you like this football team. You like Chelsea. I like you like Bundesliga. I like Premier League. You know, like it's just two different opinions. So, is there some? You know, do we have any? Are we just another group of people with our own opinion, or can we start to point to something naturally? You know, do we have any evidence in nature, or do we have anything? Because even in democracy, for example, it says whoever gets the most votes wins. So if they get the most votes, they win. That's it. They did it according to the rules that We, not us, but our rules. So we're with you so far on all this, but and also a lot of these are exercises so we can get to really the essence of what we're talking about. Is it just two different opinions, or does one side have any more objective value or something? And if it does, what is it based on? Because we could say, for example, like, gravity, like there's something behind it, and you can fight it all you want, but it's not going away. Like nature made it that way, and that's what it is. So do we also have something in this, that what we're talking about, that's kind of nature based, or something that's natural in what we're talking about, or it's just two different opinions?
Let me tell you something personal. So let's switch and let's use my story as a carrier. First, I'm going to share with you that just recently, 3 weeks ago or so, I was in Israel, and we made a film based around the Ten Commandments. And we concluded, like, as a team, and two were rabbis, we were discussing, even while making this film, and we concluded that there is objective evil and objective good. So I don't think it's just a matter of different worldviews. A group is evil and they're working towards destruction, and a smaller group is good and they're working towards.
When a Hezbollah guy gets up in the morning, right? He gets up, he brushes his teeth, he gets dressed, he makes his coffee, and he thinks about going out to work for the day.
No, I think this average person will think what is being disseminated. We know that, like in the body, right? 90% of your body is just flesh. It'll just go where the head tells it. The body doesn't think it's good or evil. The body just does, right? Pain or pleasure, he will feel that, right? But there is and I agree with Rawan, and we heard it also from other guests, that there is sort of a small control mechanism, and that control mechanism is probably good. It's good assumption that there's a more
there's certain people who wake up every morning and they say we're doing evil, like just like we wake up in the morning, we want to do good, we want to bring love, we want to bring connection.
No, I hear you. No, they're thinking they're doing something good. So the Hezbollah guy, when he wakes up in the morning, and this is what makes it really dangerous, they are ideologues. They really think they're doing something good. And what Islam preaches is that this is a material world. This is a materialistic level. And you have to become detached from it, to be a better Muslim, and to be able, or to be granted access to paradise. That's your salvation. That's what Allah wants from you. So they're not interested in making their wives happy, listening to them, the dynamics like children's well-being. Well-being means he's fed, he or she are fed, they go to school, they zip it, they don't discuss. Critical thinking is dismantled. So the way life functions is completely different. And I grew up.
That must cause tremendous amount of inner turmoil, though, in a person.
And I will add that it's really reliant on a constant constriction of the ego, which we said it was the engine of evolution. When you have a greater ego, you think more, you question more, you want more.
You have to explode. If you feel like everyone has to become depressed or explode inside.
Exactly. Let me give you an example. Forget about the psychology or what you go through if you have aspirations. Give you an example, very silly one, to see how the Syrian becomes, or why do the Syrians lack critical thinking. You have to do your final exams in high school. So we do it in one go. It's like a French system. And the way to score well, otherwise you have no chance in going to university. And in Syria, you are told by the government which university you're going to, what are you going to study. So they give you one or two options based on your grades. And in order to get optimal grades, look at how the system works. All your life, you're trained to do exactly this. You go to your exams, you learn what's written in the books, word by word. If you write exactly what you read, you score the best. the more you change or paraphrase or write your understanding, you lose grades or you don't pass your exams. Take that. Like, this is the opposite of what a good educational system is supposed to do. This is one example of how, at least I would speak about Lebanon and Syria. This is where I spent, this is where I grew up. This is how the system is. When you go to school in Syria, it's for free, the uniforms, and it was so confusing for us as children. We attended a French Catholic school. In Syria, we used to see our cousins, they're children, but they're dressed in a khaki uniform, military one. And when we asked them, like, why? It's so depressing, it's so ugly. Why? And they learned at school, they all know, if Israel comes to bomb us, they won't be able to differentiate between soldiers and students and school students and pupils.
That was your answer?
They're our cousins, like children. This is what they learned, and this is what they say proudly. They're confusing the Israelis. Human shields.
So, okay. I think it's clear. It was partly clear to us, for a while. And I think from conversations with people who actually come from that world, it's clear that critical thinking is an important part, right? So kind of have at least a personal ego that's big enough to ask, to challenge what's happening, and is this the best way to feel good and pleasure? Because the way we're built is we're designed to seek pleasure and avoid pain. So as long as the promise of pleasure is strong, we'll follow it. But the minute it starts to crumble, I will start to question it, right? And that's kind of how we've been evolving throughout the generations. So everyone we meet here, they all share the same kind of critical thinking. To some extent, they're asking what's happening, what's wrong, how can we change it, right? The guy who left his family in Egypt, the guy who stood up to people who were going this way and he went that way, right? All those examples. So maybe the first question is, how can you accelerate critical thinking in the Arab world? It seems like maybe that's a good way to hasten the what's the word, the breakdown of these totalitarian regimes, right, and mindsets. So do you have a thought on that? Social media.
Yeah.
But social media doesn't really encourage critical thinking. It's a little...
Of course it doesn't. And I was very critical of social media because it's dangerous. But after October 7th, or before October 7th, I was a dinosaur on social media. For me, like when I see my son on his phone, it drives me up the wall. It's a waste of time. What are you doing? But seeing how Hamas used social media, I'm like, okay, baby, this is our battlefield, because everyone can help. You can keep them in a box. When I say them, let me tell you a little bit about my story.
Sure.
So again, these are insights that Westerners don't necessarily think about. Do you know that Wikipedia is banned in Turkey, for example? So when I grew up in Lebanon, and I grew up in a middle-class, progressive, liberal, secular, nobody wears a veil. We celebrated Muslim and Christian holidays. But all I learned is that the Israelis are horrible, the Jews are awful. I've never spoken to a Jew. I knew nothing except what I see in the news, especially through wars. When I was a child in 1996, when we saw that the Israelis during that war bombed a shelter of the UN in southern Lebanon, and we just saw dead bodies of children. I was a child, and it filled me with hatred, with rage. Why? I wasn't interested in why the war started, and the media doesn't report that. So you wouldn't know in 2006 that all this destruction we've seen in Lebanon was instigated by Hezbollah kidnapping 2 soldiers. You don't do that with the Israelis, with the Jews, because even one person counts. Even if it's a dead body, they're going to come and fight you and take it back. So kidnapping 2 soldiers who are children, have families. When I say children, because now at my age, I see someone who's 18, I think about my son, I'm like, you don't mess with my family. I'm going to come and destroy you. You're going to give me back my people. So, but back then we weren't interested in how it started. Nobody told us this. So I grew up in this environment where everybody's open-minded. I was an atheist, and it's interesting how when you grow up among all these groups, the Sunnis tell you the Shia are lying. The Shia tell you the Sunnis are lying. I go to a Catholic school, I go to church, and they tell us the Muslims are lying. It's insane. And then you learn about the Civil War, that they killed each other, and you're like, you know what, dude, no, thank you, leave me out of it. I'm an atheist because I know they're lying. So this is how we grow up. And on YouTube, I don't see the same information you see. So I hated the Jews. When I went to live in my 20s in France, and then by coincidence, total coincidence, this is why I know that I am blessed, and I felt guilty for long because God did it for me. And if you show me the right way, why aren't the others shown the right path? In the last second, my accommodation changed, and here I am living 200 meters away from one of the biggest synagogues in the world, seeing that the Jews are actually nice. I like them. And you know what? Why am I scared of them? Doing my due diligence, reading about it, and realizing, okay, Hezbollah are awful. They're like awful. They're terrorists. But I had access to uncensored information in the West. So I could wake up, and still the process took forever. And when I tried to do something about it, I went to study Islamic and Jewish studies at university, and I took classes. It's part of my degree. As you all know, Judaism, people don't go on a missionary quest, like, come join us. Nobody did this.
On the contrary.
Exactly. You don't need to, if you're a good person, Jews will love you. You don't need to convert. It adds nothing. So this is something that happened in a class with a rabbi. It was really simple. What he was saying, it blew my mind. And I realized there is objective good and objective evil. What Judaism works towards, their goals, the way they live their life, individually or within a community, the way they interact and they perceive other groups, and the goal towards their work, it seems so simple, but for me, it absolved me from depression, from this misery. I couldn't understand the world until I discovered Judaism. So for me, it was, when I told the rabbi I'm converting, he didn't play games with me, like, nah. He knew that I'm going back home.
I didn't realize that you're converting. I was about to ask about the necklace. No.
Now you know.
I'm going to tell you even more. I would say you're probably, if you went back, you probably find out you're already a Jew anyway. So, but besides that, how do you, that's another story, but how do you define it when you said you realize there's objective good and evil? So what does that mean? Let me tell you something. We look at everything in terms of like not hocus pocus, although there's a huge hocus pocus piece to everything, which is like, who the hell are these people? Where did they come from? How did they survive they're always tiny group. They survived every huge empire. Like, there's something about, like, there's some extra supernatural thing associated with this group of people through time. But on the other hand, we're always being like tachlis, like look at nature. There's night, there's day, there's in, there's out, there's up, there's down, there's light, there's dark, right? So it goes to, if you follow that within nature, there's two forces in everything. We want to be, we're not going to win this intellectual argument and go out and explain to the LGBTQ guy who said, is waving his Palestinian flag. We're not going to talk sense into this guy. Like, it's not happening. But we can begin to understand for ourselves, what is, like, clearly what's happening, and then develop this circle amongst others who also understand that, and hope that this ripples through the system. Because in the same way, like Leo said before, the skin, most of the body just follows the head. I mean, the body follows the head. So we don't need to deal with convincing the whole body. We just need to get the head right, or really the heart right, because actually the head follows the heart, which the whole body follows. If we can get the heart right, that will, we feel, ripple through the whole system. You called it like social media, whatever that network is that it goes through. But let's try and be clear about what is that objective, like what is it that we're aiming towards? What is that good?
I, as an individual, I can only speak about myself, especially during these times. It is horrific what's like since October 7th. Something is happening, something massive. I don't know if everyone can feel it, even if they can't rationalize. But I tell you that nobody knew that I'm converting because it's something personal and it doesn't need to make sense to anybody. It was for me. It was a gift I was giving. It's overwhelming even. But I understood, at least for me as an individual, on October 7th, what I need to do. And our actions matter. Every word we say matters. And it can change the world or create change. I haven't had a day off for many years. And my son always says, my mom is obsessed with the Middle East. Do you know anything else? Do you do anything else? No holidays, no weekends. I have this sense of urgency. Something is going to happen. And it was difficult to explain to people that if they could, the Arabs, they would eat the Jews alive. Israel was an island, they would have wiped it off the planet Earth. But for me, like converting or realizing that I finally found home, this group of people who are working towards good, and they're always at the forefront of these battles, and they survive. It doesn't make sense if it wasn't for Hashem. And I feel sorry for people, for even Jews who have no faith, because without Imunah, I wouldn't be able to get out of bed. But knowing that we will prevail against all odds keeps me going. So I did a DNA test and I got the results on the 5th of October to realize that I do have Jewish ancestry.
Of course, I could have told you without the test.
Save you the $32 or whatever.
Because people kept saying this. For me, it's I'm coming home. And even when I met the Bedin, I'm coming home. I'm willing to go through the conversion, an Orthodox conversion, because I want to make Aliyah, even before I ever visited Israel. I just knew I'm coming home. But because of these comments where people say, you do have a Jewish soul, so I went and took the DNA test. 5th of October, on the 6th of October, I had that trip. And I lied. I wrote an email saying, I have a family emergency. I couldn't stop crying. I was sitting at this very same desk and I was crying. I didn't know why. So I was thinking, I'm almost 40. It must be hormonal. I'm not a depressive person. I'm a very strong character. Why was I weeping? On October 7th, I didn't want to wake up. So when I was frightened when I switched my phone on and I read the news, it was almost noon and I was still sitting on my bed and my son came and said, Mom, are you sick? It's almost noon. And he just realized, I was like reading on the BBC. So he saw the news and he came back and he said nothing. He just nodded. He understood, I'm not obsessed. He understood where my sense of urgency is coming from. So after that, I understood I have to do something. And I didn't discuss that social media makes sense. It doesn't make sense. I'm going to Israel. And I told Naama Levi's mom, Naama, for those who don't know, is this girl, and this is one of the first videos I've seen, the girl with the gray sweatpants covered with blood who was paraded on the streets in Gaza. I told my team, because we built a project out of zero. I'm like focused and I keep pushing and I got people together and I'm going to Israel to meet Naama Levi's mom. And I promised her, she's called Ayelet. I didn't know that she's a doctor, she's a physician. I promised her that Naama Levi's name will haunt Hamas in their graves. They crossed every red line. And we are at a critical moment in history where we have to choose sides. And I did. mine, and we should invite others to do the same. Social media is one way because you can censor information, censor Wikipedia, YouTube, you can tell the lies, you can even pump billions into this machine called Al Jazeera to spread lies, to incite against the Jews. But there is social media, and there are those who will see the truth. One last thing, I'm sorry, I went on and on, but one last thing. A rabbi, I didn't know that he's a rabbi. I met someone and we partnered, and they're helping with this project. When I say helping with design, I have my videos, even if it's 30 seconds, it's a lot of work behind it and a big team. And I felt always a guilt. Why was I shown the light, not others? So I meet this guy who happens to be a rabbi. I just realized that in the office in Manhattan. And he said something after the meeting. He said with a big smile, and I love this guy, he told me, "I'm very happy that you read the signs." We continued, we talked. Then I was walking back in Manhattan, and I was absolved of my guilt. Because it just hit me that everybody's given a chance. I stopped feeling guilty. I was shown a way, and everyone is offered a way. Like at Mount Sinai, everybody got a chance. Even a Hamas terrorist who saw a child maybe in a safe room, a terrified child. He had the chance, and maybe some did, we don't know. Just ignore it. Don't bring attention, carry on, say there's nobody, and maybe some did. So God speaks to us in many, many, many different ways. And I just realized that we're all shown the light, and we all have a responsibility to roll our sleeves up and try to spread this light.
I'm so grateful to meet you.
I think our prophecy came true when we started the show, and I know we were going to meet this great heart. It happens every time, and it happened here as well. And I think what our hope is that that by choosing sides, I hope people understand that we're choosing. It's not really a side necessarily, as much as this is the end goal. Like everything is moving in that direction. That's the one thing that you read all the Jewish sages who wrote about it. It's moving in that direction. It's moving toward this realization, which starts with the critical thinking, but it goes beyond the thinking. It goes into the feeling. It goes into the feeling of this is love, this is good, and this is not. But it takes a certain level of development, because the less developed is the one who only thinks of himself, and then the most developed is the one who thinks of others. But that's a process, and we realize it. And this is the real war. These are the sides that we see. Are you thinking about the good eventually that will come to everyone, or just some limited good that will come to a limited part, which is maybe me, maybe some people around me, for a limited amount of time? Those are really, so these are like really huge sides. This is not simply two sides of a political debate, but it's really something massive. And
yeah, let me just add something to that. It really got me thinking this last 2 minutes here, that our enemies are always pointing at us and saying we're the problem.
Yeah.
I think what happens when the light starts to shine, like when a light shines in the room and then you can see the dust, but before the light shined, you didn't. I think when the light starts to shine for us and shine in us, it starts to illuminate our soul inside of us, that we see, like you said, that we have to make that decision. Like everything exists inside of me, and what am I, like, how am I going to like I'm not pointing at anyone else anymore. Like I'm of course I have to do things on the outside, like you said, but like that critical blame or whatever, or absolution eventually comes. When the light shines inside, it's like, whoosh, oh, there, that's that, and that's that. When it's dark, it's always just outside, outside, outside. And when the light shines, like everything clarifies inside of me, and it's like I can objectively see what's what.
You know, a lot of people write like there are people we can never reason with. So people write to me sometimes, how much are the Zionists paying you to do this? And I hope, like, are you betraying us for how much money? And I have no idea that we did the fundraising. It's a project instigated by. Anyway, what I want to tell you, the power of Judaism, and I'm still on this journey, and I'm enjoying it slowly. I went to Israel for the first time after October 7th. And I was worried. I didn't know what to expect. And I made sure that there is a team always with me, because I was thinking maybe someone who lost a loved one will attack me. What do you mean? Like I arrived there like, hi, I'm half Syrian, half Lebanese. And I tell you what happened. So I have a friend, a very good friend, who was actually, I hosted here before October 7th. He's Israeli. His mom is a Lebanese Jew who left in the 60s. And we just met at a conference at a university in Europe, and we just became family. Just like that. And it happens with a lot of Jews, with a lot of Israelis. It would just click. So this guy went to visit his family in Israel. And October 7th happened, and he was called to the north. And he spent a long time there. When I was going there, he said, I'm taking 4 days off and I'm staying with you. So he came and he's like, what? My little brother. And he was wearing his uniform and with his gun. And I just noticed that wherever we go, strangers come to him, even when he doesn't see them, pat his back. Sometimes they cry, give him a hug from behind. And they tell him, "Shitehi achi," so like that they wish him well. And he just like says thank you even without turning. So it's like, it's an obvious thing in Israel. And I lived in 7 countries. I've never seen this. This love people have for each other, even when they fight, when they argue. This general mood, how they help one another. And when I say this in Israel, Israelis look at me, it's like, what are you talking about? This is not how we behave. Yes, I can compare you to 7 different countries. This general mood and the way I was received without the Star of David, without people seeing it, without knowing that I'm converting. When I say I'm Syrian and Lebanese, the way I was treated like a queen. This is unbelievable. Even Naama Levi's mom, who is a physician, who knows that her daughter was probably assaulted, and if she's raped, she could be pregnant. The power of Judaism is unbelievable. When I asked her, do you think you can ever forgive Arabs? Do you think you can ever find peace? And she said, forgive Arabs? I'm a physician. I'm a doctor. My colleagues are Arabs. I treat Arabs every day. And my problem is not with Arabs. I don't know if I can ever forgive the person who did this to my daughter. And this still gives me goosebumps. It's like a casual story, but this is what I heard from many, many Israelis. How can you still see hope? How can you still believe in a better future, in the possibility of peace? There are angry ones who tell me, I never want to talk to Arabs again, but I've never heard one person, even the most radical, who wished death upon all Arabs, what I heard about the Jews and the Israelis growing up. And this is a huge difference. Objective good, objective evil.
One, I put I think we could have summed it up better. I think everyone who feels that, identifies with it. Those are the people we're after. Those are people we're looking for. I put a little quote here from. We invite our guests to read quotes from sages, and this is from the introduction to the Book of Zohar that was written 2,000 years ago, and very highly misunderstood. But Baal HaSulam, who was a great Kabbalist in the 20th century, the greatest, and he wrote an introduction, and he actually made explained what's this whole thing about, and it's one of the things that influences our work. So I would love for you to read this out loud. It's a little longer than the usual quotes we give, but it's so rich, and it just kind of, it shows some of the things you talked about, and just they're kind of like brought into from this highest perspective ever. So if you do us the honor, I'd love to.
Thank you. The Creator's desired goal for the creation he had created is to bestow upon his creatures so they would know his truthfulness and greatness and receive all the delight and pleasure he had prepared for them. Thus, you clearly find that this purpose does not apply to the still and the great spheres such as the earth, the moon, or the sun, however luminous they may be, and not to the vegetative or the animate, for they lack the sensation of others, even from among their own species. Therefore, how can the sensation of the godly and his bestowal apply to them? Humankind alone, having been prepared with the sensation of others of the same species, who are similar to them, after working in correcting their egoistic desires, when they invert their will to receive, to a desire to bestow and achieve equivalence of form with their maker, they receive all the degrees that have been prepared for them in the upper worlds. By this, they become qualified to receive the purpose of the thought of creation. Wow.
Rawan, I hope many people hear this talk. Many people. It is time to choose sides and to choose the good. Maybe we can do it. It has to do with this simple idea: love for others. Simple. It's but you give us hope. So
I want to leave you with a thought. And I told my team before I could prove it, I knew that I'm not unique, I'm not special. Many people are like me. I'm just given a character that's fearless. But there are many others, trust me, who send me private messages and I share it with my team. There are, and when I say sides, I don't mean that everybody should become a Zionist or convert to Judaism. Take the side of the good people who are trying to do something good for everyone. And this good side can also include cousins, can include people from Saudi Arabia, doesn't matter. And we're going to find each other. We're connecting the dots now, and then the light will grow.
And hopefully it happens quickly. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
Thank you indeed. This has been another live broadcast of the Thejewfunction, and we're forever grateful to Rawan for joining our circle. From now until the, as we call it, the end of correction. And, may it happen sooner than later. I think we're ready. A lot of people are waking up to it, and with more inspiring people like yourself, I think it will happen sooner than later. I think everybody wakes up and become this beacon, this router, and as you said, social media. It's really the social network. It's bigger than social media, and these things travel also not just through the internet. They travel from within. So we're very hopeful, and especially after meeting people like you. And we invite everyone to share this show, spread it. I don't think our job is not to eliminate the bad, but it's to meet it with the good that's greater, and everything else nature will take care of it. Nature, the creator, however you want to call it, there are forces at work, and we see them. And so with that, we wish everyone a great afternoon. I hope this Holocaust Remembrance Day will be the right kind of remembrance, not, oh, that this happened and, you know, they did this to us and all that, but rather what we can do now that we haven't done back then. So I really hope this is what we take from this. Thank you, Rawan. Seth, brother.
Bye, everybody. Big hug.
Big hug. We'll see you all next week.
Bye.